This is Reah, and this is Just the Who of Us, where we talk about a range of topics, including life events, current events, spirituality, entertainment, family relationships, as well as answering listener questions and more.
Thank you all for tuning in, whether you're listening or you're watching. We appreciate you being here. Today with us, we have Lesley Goth. Lesley is a psychologist and and now an author. And today we are going to start off. We're excited to have Lesley join our multi-episode guest family, and today we're going to get to know you a little bit and discuss your journey into authorship.
Sounds
Um,
good.
Welcome. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Same. Um, Leslie, tell us a little bit about um, kind of your background and what inspired you initially to even think about writing.
I think a lot of times writers always feel like they've got like kind of something in them. They just maybe don't know what or when or how or why or any of that. And I remember when my children were really young, they're adults now, but when they were little, I always thought, oh, I want to write a book. I want maybe to write like a children's book. And so I just kind of like something got in me where that little seed, was in there. And I always like to teach. I love to share and to encourage and to, just kind of help guide people. I mean, I do that as a therapist. But so anyway, kind of fast forward through the years, I did write a children's book. Nothing ever happened with it. It's sitting in my file cabinet. Like nothing has come of that. But over the years, just really felt like there was something in me and it kept kind of growing, and I just had no idea what. And the thought of writing a book is so daunting, right? I mean, everyone that I've talked to who has written a book always describe it as like the most harrowing experience of their lives. So that was always created a lot of trepidation. Like, why would
Yeah,
I embark on something that just sounds horrible?
right.
So fast forward to about a couple years ago, I have social media and I had posted some information on sexual assault. And, it was just kind of educating the people that follow me on what it is and how to identify it, because a lot of people don't even realize that they have been through it, because it
Yeah,
can be very subtle, things like that. So
yeah.
that one TikTok reel went viral, and it's still growing 2 years later. It just hit
Right.
100,000. So
Wow.
that's very exciting. And from that video, people were reaching out to me asking questions such as, is this sexual assault? Does this count as sexual assault? What about this? What if I gave consent? Things like that. Each one of these precious people that reached out to me had really good questions. And I started to think, each one of these questions could be its own chapter, because survivors of sexual assault are not alone. We all struggle with the same questions. We all struggle with the same shame and guilt and what if this and what if that and da 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 da. And we just are tortured with all that residual shame and self-blame that comes after such a trauma. So that's where I started thinking like each one of these questions could be a chapter. So I had been connected to Sierra Melker on Facebook, and
Mm.
she is the owner of Red Thread Publishing. And so I contacted her and we just started chatting on what that process would be like to work together. And she really has a fabulous program on how to basically write a book in 6 months. So
Yes.
and her process is fabulous. It's not torture. It's not this horrible experience that everybody thinks writing a book is about. I actually had a lot of fun. I mean, it was a very humbling experience. It was very hard
Uh-huh.
work, but it wasn't this harrowing, daunting, terrible nightmare experience that, a lot of authors paint it to be.
Yeah.
So that's how my book, Unbroken, A Survivor's Journey After Sexual Assault, came to be birthed, and she got birthed in June, this just a couple months ago. And yeah, and so now she's out there and she's doing good.
That's amazing. And it's always amazing to me when people take these ideas and they turn them into something beautiful and helpful. And it's crazy how just putting a little bit of information out into the world can bring
Yeah,
so much inquisition. And
I know. I
on
had no
on a
idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because those of us who work in the mental health field, we're kind of around it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's kind of, I don't want to
We're
say normal,
desensitized.
but
No, but
it's
we're desensitized
yeah,
to
yeah,
the impact of
yeah,
some of these really, really rough topics. So
yes,
you're absolutely right. And so here I am just talking about sexual assault, and all of a sudden, and I was like, wow, I
yeah.
guess a lot of people really need this information.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, because when you're kind of in it all the time, you forget that there
Oh,
are people who are
yeah.
either just beginning their journey
Mhm.
into healing from this traumatic event, or you just kind of think that everyone has the same information as you, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
When I wrote my parenting book, I kind of had the same, kind of like idea. I was like, all these categories of information, like
Yes.
I could write a chapter about each of these things. And so it really is like it's humbling to kind of think outside yourself
It
and
is.
give people
It is.
information
And
that,
I'm sure like you writing the parenting book, you had to tap into your own struggles as a parent,
yeah,
right? We
yeah,
have to be able to admit where we're not perfect, right? As parents, right?
right.
And so same with my book, it's like the first draft, which I thought, hey, this is so good. My editors are just gonna love this, like ripped it to shreds and was like, Lesley couldn't even get past the first chapter. It was so bad. And it was
Oh,
because
wow.
I wasn't vulnerable. I wasn't sharing my
Yes.
own experiences like you probably had to do as a parent. You had to really kind of dig into yourself. I had to
Yeah.
dig into my own trauma, my own sexual assault history, and be real and share about it. And once I was able to do that, the book took on a whole new kind of softer, gentler, more compassionate life, if that makes
Yeah. So working with Red Thread,
sense.
had you thought about working with a publisher kind of going into this, or did you plan it to be kind of an independent piece, or how did it
I
kind of
wasn't
come
really
about?
sure. I think initially, of course, the dream is to have someone else, to send out the manuscript, right? And have someone, some of these bigger name publishing companies say, oh my God, Lesley, we have to publish you and like,
Right.
get you on retainer or something and, promote you and market you and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of not the way the world works anymore in publishing.
Right.
So, because
Right.
I have talked to other authors who went that route and they still had to do their own marketing. They still had to do a lot
Yeah.
of the legwork
Yeah.
themselves. So, hearing that, I was like, okay. And so, the first goal was obviously just to write the book. And then I was going to figure out, do I want to really do the legwork and, send it around to publishers,
Yeah.
or use or work with Red Thread again as my self-publishing company where they, do a developmental edit. They go through your manuscript with a fine-tooth comb. They then give you the marketing plan. They give you, really everything you need in a nice big toolbox for to self-publish, but they
Okay.
guide you so that you don't have to figure it out yourself, right? How do I get
Yeah.
a the number? How do I get this on Amazon? How do I, things like that. So
Yeah.
they really have it all mapped out for you to self-publish. So I decided after kind of doing a little bit of research, what would be the better route, just to stick with who I knew and I trusted,
Right.
and just continue to work with them then not only on the writing side and the editing side but on the publishing side. So it really has been a fabulous relationship, and I don't regret any of that. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I went through Red Thread. I was in the collaborative work, Notes from
Yes.
Motherland, and
Nice. And that's
I
done really, really well.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. But my other works I did independently, and my autobiography, I went through a whole different publisher, and I wish I would have known about Red Thread because
Yeah.
it was through that journey that I discovered, what you mentioned about like they don't do the marketing, they don't do like any of that stuff, and I was expecting all that, and
Right, of course. Yeah.
and even with this, which I don't even know if they're still like active anymore, but with this publisher, they try to kind of completely change everything about the book. And I know some, like
Oh.
but when you're writing an emotional piece, as you know, you still want like your emotions and your tone behind it. And so that's one
You
thing
lose a lot of control, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and that's
yeah,
the piece, that you have to weigh the
right.
cost of that,
Right,
basically.
right.
Yeah.
But I didn't experience that with Red Thread. I didn't feel
No.
like they were taking away and we are not like paid promoters for Red Thread. We just really
No.
enjoy working with
We're
them.
just happy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
and I've met a lot of authors and guests honestly on the school app. And
Exactly. And that's how we connected.
again, not paid promoters, but if you
Yeah.
are in the writing world, it is
Yeah.
really a great tool to
Yes.
connect with other writers. You know, you can join writing groups, you can join communities of women or like-minded people. And yeah, this it's how we connected was through school. We wrote for Red Thread, but it
Yeah.
wasn't until we were on school and we connected that way
Exactly.
that we met each other.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's really a great tool. But part of getting yourself out there as an author is the networking. And I have
Mhm.
found that that's been a really important piece of not just writing, but podcasting too, but just
Ah,
putting yourself out there and networking with people.
I agree.
You can write have your own story and have your own work, but connecting with other people, you can inspire each other. You
Yeah.
learn
Yeah.
also that there are other people who have gone through similar journeys with you, and that's one reason for writing, right? Is to like put things out for other people to benefit from, on top of putting it
100%.
out to get it out for us. But especially when you work in the mental health field, most of what we do and what we put out is for the benefit of others' well-being. And so that's a great tool or a great benefit to networking too when you're in this business.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. And that's why we're here.
Right. Um, would would you say with this process, did you ever experience writer's block?
I did experience writer's block because, again, I kind of got the content through the people's questions.
That makes
So,
sense.
right. So they provided such good, meaty material for me to expand on.
Yeah.
And then from their questions, I was able to, talk about, like, for example, like one of the questions was, what if I didn't say no? And so that helps me then say, let's have a whole chapter about consent. What is consent?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then I can use again my own story, I can use client stories, and I can kind of expand and create a whole picture for a potential reader, someone who is also struggling with, well, I didn't say no. And I just did a TikTok
Yeah.
yesterday on this because I had someone else reach out to me saying that they were, sadly, and I hope, this could be trigger for people listening, that they had gone through a rape. They felt like they were drugged and they were raped, but their girlfriend said, well, you didn't say no, so it's not rape. And I just want to
Gosh.
blow my gasket, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, no, that is from the dark ages. Um,
Right.
First of
Right.
all, you were under the influence, so you can't give consent.
Exactly.
And secondly,
Exactly.
just because you didn't say no, you also didn't say yes. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyway, it gives me the material. So writer's block was, thankfully not a challenge in my personal writing process, but I know that that's a real thing. One
Yeah.
of the things that I loved in the writing program that I did with Red Thread, the 6 month, write your manuscript in 6 months, was she has this four-step process. And one is to write, one is to rest, right? Well, the first step is
Mhm.
like to dream and to think about, what you want to create. And then the second step is rest.
Yeah.
It's a big part of writing is actually not writing, it's resting
Right.
and and taking care of yourself. And it's through the resting part of the writing process that you get creative. And when you're not forcing it, that's where I think writer's block comes for a lot of people, is that you're
Yeah.
feeling pressure. You're feeling, I should be writing, I
Yes.
should be making something phenomenal. And when you rest, there isn't that pressure and you can just relax and let the creativity come to you. And then you can sit down and write or type or do however you like, dictate however you like to get your thoughts on
Yeah.
paper. and it comes with such an ease and a flow, which I think most authors feel like, no, they just got to sit down for 3 hours, write 10,000 words, and then go about their day. And it's just, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yes, yeah. When I was writing my autobiography, I started it and I kind of did like my chapter outlines and everything. And I started, writing a little bit on each topic. And I just got so emotionally overwhelmed that I put it
Mm,
down for a few years. Like
exactly.
it became
Exactly.
so much, but honestly, I didn't even plan on finishing it. It was just like a project
Oh,
I was doing. And
yeah.
yeah, so, but it became so overwhelming because for one, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was writing about things that I hadn't really worked through as like my way to work through them. And
Yeah. This
so,
was like your own therapeutic process,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. But it became, yeah, it just became so overwhelming. So I think that's great advice. Like take time to rest, for
Yeah.
we're doing this for fun, right? Like if
Yeah.
we aren't working with someone who's giving us deadlines, we're typically doing this because we want to enjoy, we want to enjoy the process. So,
Right. Yeah.
absolutely make it enjoyable, make it
Absolutely.
fun, make it beneficial, and if it's something difficult. One thing when I was working with another publisher, we had like monthly calls
Uh-huh.
and just kind of like wellness check-in because I was
Mm.
writing about such emotional topics, and I found that really helpful too, you
Yes.
know, to kind of, okay, where are we at? How are we feeling, with this? Should we maybe table this topic, maybe work through it a little bit, and then
Right.
kind of
Right.
thing. So that's perfect advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, with this book, is there a question that you wish someone particularly would ask you about this book? Like when you're talking about it, you're kind of like, I wish someone asked me about this so that I can tell them
Huh.
about this, or something about either the book itself, the information, or its connection to you or your career, or anything
That
like
is
that.
such a good question. No one has asked me that. I think what comes to mind is with most survivors, there's such a sense of hopelessness.
Yes.
And they've tried everything, or they've tried therapy maybe once or twice, or they think they've already kind of checked all the boxes and now there's just no hope for them.
Yeah.
And so if they came to me and if they said, what difference is it going to make to read your book? Right?
Yeah.
Then I would say, well, first of all, you got nothing to lose.
Right.
120
Right.
pages, like it's really not going to take that much. Secondly, there will be nuggets, right, of hope and
Yeah.
encouragement because it's not only stories of other people that have been through the exact same thing, so you're not going to feel alone. There's
Yeah.
also exercises, there's practical tools that
Oh,
maybe you haven't
right.
tried yet. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe you haven't, right? So, and then there's affirmations, right? Because even just speaking, learning how to speak to ourselves in a positive way creates new neural pathways in our brains. And
Yeah.
so we need those new neural pathways because right now we only got what we got, and they're usually pretty negative, right? And they're usually pretty shame-based. So if we can start to incorporate and integrate more positive affirmations and how do we speak to ourselves, that in and of itself is so healing.
Yes.
So there will
Yeah.
be something in that book that even someone with no hope can take away and integrate and shift in their own life. So I guess that would be my answer. But that was a great question. No one's
Thank
asked that.
you. I love that because honestly, too, it kind of shows what sets your book apart. Because I think a
Mhm.
lot of times when we're reading books like this, that's not a component. We're just kind of thinking, okay, let's tell these stories. Let's, maybe give you some how-tos, some coping
Mhm,
skills,
mhm,
coping
mhm.
mechanisms, and that's about so adding the affirmations and adding tools
Yeah.
is fantastic. That kind
Yeah.
of sets you apart because that's not a common thing in this type of writing.
I hope so because it's the healing from sexual assault, healing from any trauma, and that's a lot of feedback I've actually gotten from readers of the book. Like, hey, Lesley, this isn't just about sexual assault; this is about any trauma,
Yeah.
and walking through the healing process. So it's like, wow, like that's an added benefit as well.
Yeah.
But I think that what I wanted was I wanted people to not feel alone so that they could like see themselves in some of these stories. I wanted
Yes.
them to know that I get it, I've been through it, and then I wanted them to have something to start working on, if not by themselves, but even with their therapist, right? And
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
it could be a real resource. I think we need resources when we're healing from trauma. And
Yes.
so this could be another tool in someone's toolbox.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that you mentioned, and I actually had a brief conversation with someone else referring to the LGBTQ plus community and sexual
Oh,
assault and domestic
yeah,
violence.
yeah,
It's very often that people don't realize that they are being assaulted. And part of this is, the boys will be boys rhetoric. Oh, he's mean because he likes you, blah, blah, blah.
right,
And there's a big natural assumption that domestic violence and sexual assault typically is men being the attackers of women. Um,
correct.
and that's not always the case. And so, it's very important for men to be able to recognize that when they
Yes,
are being assaulted or abused,
absolutely, absolutely.
children, teenagers, it's not just women. And I
Right.
think that's something that kind of needs a little bit of attention too. I think
Hmm.
men, gay men and straight men alike
Hmm.
kind of
Hmm.
really hesitate to report sexual assault
Well,
specifically.
and I literally, Rhea, it's so funny. I just did a reel this morning on this very
I
topic.
promise I didn't see it.
And my next book, which I've already started just kind of, gathering notes for, is going to be for men and healing from sexual assault.
Okay.
Because I do think that is a myth that it's really only women and children that this happens to, and that men
Yes.
can't be sexually assaulted. There's an even higher stigma for men to come forward, right? They're
Yes.
supposed to be strong and macho. And what do you mean? Like, what do you mean you couldn't fight back? What do you mean you couldn't tell her no? What do you mean?
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so,
Yeah.
but I have, heard from people that, male on male, like I know someone personally who was, he's a man and he was sexually assaulted by another couple of men in the military.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
and I had people reach out to me on social media where one young man in college, his ex-girlfriend, sexually assaulted him. And he was having a really hard time thinking, this through and all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even harder for men to come forward because they, again, are supposed to be strong.
Right.
And so, yeah, so the stigma is high. It's high for women, but it's even higher for men.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and certainly, like, what is a man supposed to do? He goes to the authorities and he says, "This woman sexually assaulted me." What are the authorities going to say?
Right. Right.
I mean, they're bad. It's bad enough
I,
with women. They say,
I,
"What were you?"
right.
To a woman, they'll say,
What
"Well,
were
what
you
were you
doing?
wearing? Were you
Yeah.
drinking? What about your past relationships?" Like, they will completely discredit her
Yeah.
experience. Now, imagine if a man comes forward to the authorities
Right.
and what he's going to be asked.
Right. Yeah.
It's even worse.
Right. Yeah, yeah, because that's such a good point because the stigma is on them like, well, you're a man, you should be able to fight back or
Mhm.
you're a man, your men are more sexual, so
But
you
you wanted it.
probably
You wanted this to
wanted
happen.
it.
Right.
Yeah, like yeah, it's
Right.
it's crazy and it's something that I don't think is talked about a lot.
Mm-mm.
Sexual assault in general is
No,
not reached as much as it should be. It's not
I agree.
prioritized as much as it should be, but it really is stigmatized against men. And that's something so I'm looking
Right.
forward to that. I'm looking forward to that project. And
Yeah.
I would love to have you back to talk about that once that is well
Yes.
underway and everything too.
Yes. Yes. I would love to. Yes. I want to normalize, I guess, for survivors, the shame and the self-blame that they carry, and then that leads to other unhealthy coping mechanisms. It could be
Yeah,
eating disorders, it could be substance abuse to try to numb or avoid those feelings of shame and self-blame. It could
yeah,
also lead to, difficulty with future intimacy if they've been through something like that.
yeah,
And then they, think that they're broken, thus the title of the book, Unbroken.
yeah,
Um, So I just want to normalize that whatever, they might be, any listeners, that are hearing this right now and struggling with their own healing process, like it's normal to struggle, but it's important to process what they've been through so that they can, what I call, clear out any of that guilt and shame so that they can be free and really
Yeah.
the life they deserve, future relationships they deserve. They've already been a victim. They don't have to stay there, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
heal. Like healing is
Yeah.
absolutely possible. This is not a death sentence. They are not
Yeah.
forever broken.
Yeah.
And so I just feel very, very passionate about encouraging people and giving them hope, like healing from trauma. Any trauma is possible. You just have to be patient. You
Yeah.
have to be compassionate with yourself and you have to be patient. And I said that twice on purpose
Yeah.
because people are very impatient with their healing processes. So
And it's a process.
you
Absolutely.
have to be patient, especially if there's been a
Yeah.
lot of trauma, not just
Right.
one situation that you've been through, but maybe
Yeah.
multiple situations that you've been through. So it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes finding the right team to work with you to
Yes.
guide you along the healing journey. So I want to put that out there.
And in terms of, mentioning a team, this might be a loaded question, but um is
Oh, I'm
is
ready. I'm ready.
and really it's I don't know if there is a way to broaden this, but because each incident is specific to the person and everybody goes
Sure.
through different things in the
Sure.
process. Um, can you give a piece of advice to the support persons coming to someone who has
Excellent
gone
question.
through a sexual assault?
Excellent question. So I do have a whole chapter at the end of the book for partners or family or friends, of
Perfect.
of loved ones that have been through this. But that's
Yeah.
a great, great, great question. It's really important for partners or people in a support position of the victim to listen. I think as people, when we care about someone, we just want them to feel better, right? And so we
Yeah.
to fix it mode and we say, this is
Yep.
what you should do. You should do this, you should do this, you should do this, you should go to the authorities, you should blah blah. And
Yeah.
the partner or support person wants to, say these are all the things you should do. And it's overwhelming to the survivor. So it's really about tolerating your own anxiety that
Mm.
the person you care about is struggling and to just let them know that you're there, you're willing to listen, you're not going to judge, don't ask questions like, well, why were you at the bar at 2 o'clock in the morning? Or
Right.
why
Yeah.
I told you not to go out with those people. Why did you? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's important not to ask why questions. It's important to ask what? What do you need? How can I support you? Do you need me to help you just get the groceries for the week? Do you need help with childcare? Do you want me to sit with you in your first therapy session just to add support? Things like that. A lot of survivors aren't ready to do anything.
Yeah.
They really aren't. They're not
Yeah.
ready to go to the authorities. They're not ready to start therapy. They're not ready to read a
Yeah.
book. They're not ready to do anything. And so,
Yeah.
as the supporter of that person, you just say, okay, let me know when and if you are, and I'm here for you. Right. And that's it. That's it. It's really simple.
Yeah.
Now, if you're in a relationship, like you're in an intimate relationship with that person, say it's a husband or a wife of a survivor, or a boyfriend or a girlfriend of a survivor, and this is any like in gay relationships and heterosexual relationships, it doesn't matter. If you are the partner of that person and you're in an intimate relationship, then for you it takes a lot of patience because they may not want to be intimate. They may feel very triggered with
Yeah.
intimacy. And they
Yeah.
may have to put that on the back burner for quite some time. So it's important for you to get into your own therapy and get the support that you need so that you can gauge what your boundaries need to be regarding connection and attachment and intimacy while your partner is hurting and struggling. And it's okay to say to your partner, let's say it's been 6 months or a year and intimacy is just not there, right? Intimacy is important in a relationship. That's fair. We all
Right.
have needs. to
Yeah.
say to your partner who is the survivor, say, look, I miss you. I'm struggling. I know you've been through a harrowing trauma. What can we do together to rebuild our intimacy and create safety here in this relationship so that we can start to move forward? Maybe we need to go to
Love
therapy
that.
together. Maybe
Yeah.
I want to be patient. I want to continue for you to go on your own journey at your time. But at the same time, I also have intimacy needs and I miss you.
Yeah, I love
Right?
that. And I want to kind of briefly on the flip side, because I was assaulted as a child and a teenager, and as a
Yeah.
teenager, I became very promiscuous, and
Me too.
part of
Yep.
that was two parts, and I talk about this in my autobiography. But for one, I felt out of control, and like people were just gonna take things from me anyway, so I just took it from them first,
Right.
and
Right.
so when you're in a relationship with someone who has been assaulted, sometimes that happens as well. Sometimes, and whether it be with addiction or just the unhealthy habits or with promiscuity, these are also kind of things to look for that person has been through something traumatic. And
Yes. Yes.
when you're assaulted to that degree, sometimes you do things that don't make sense to other people to
Right.
feel you're regaining that control that you feel like you lost in your life.
Exactly. Yeah, for me, I was also assaulted as a very young girl. And I learned that my body was just an object, right? I was
Yeah,
an
yeah,
object. And this was how I got attention. This was how I got love. And
yep,
so same thing, like I always had to be in a relationship and it always got sexual super fast.
yeah,
Because that was my way to feel secure.
yep,
And, I also developed an eating disorder and had horrible body image issues because, again,
yeah,
my body was the thing. My body was the object where
yes.
I would
The
get
just the focus of
love.
everything. Yeah,
Yeah, it was the focus of everything.
yeah,
And so that along with what the world teaches us and this pressure on women to look a certain way and
right,
all the things, it was like the perfect storm. And
right,
so that was all stuff that led me to, really struggle with food in my body and get into substances and all the things
yeah,
because I wanted to numb my own pain, but I learned very young my body is just an object for someone else's pleasure.
yep.
That's what it is.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and and in terms of support, it's really, when you have a partner or a child or a
Mhm.
family member or a friend, that you see kind of going kind of off the rails, so to say, in that manner, it's really important to pay attention to and uh how really briefly, how can we support a loved one when we see that they are kind of responding to an assault in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think to say what you're seeing, hey, I'm concerned, not you're
Yeah.
doing this, you're doing that, and we don't
Right.
be pointing
Right.
fingers. And again, I try to avoid you statements like you're
Yeah.
drinking a lot. What the hell's wrong with you? It's like,
Right.
hey,
Right.
I'm noticing and I'm concerned that you're drinking a lot, and are you okay?
Yeah.
Or is there anything that you're needing? A lot of times people drink a lot because they're hurting.
Yeah.
Are you hurting? And how can I support you? So I know a lot of people don't have that psychological awareness. Like you and I, we're in the mental health field, so we know to kind of like notice these things. And we
Right.
for the most part, how to ask these really hard questions. A lot of people don't. And they're like,
Yeah.
you're drinking, and
Yeah.
they'll get angry, right? Because they're
Hmm.
scared. People are scared when they see their loved ones making really bad choices. They get scared and they get angry when they're scared
Yeah.
versus coming from a place of concern. And that's what
Hmm.
I always encourage people. Come from a place of care and concern, not anger or shame. The last person,
Right.
last thing a survivor needs is more shame. So,
Right.
hey, this is what I'm noticing. I'm concerned. Are you
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. All right. Well, that is about, unfortunately, all the time we have today, but you will be back for more
I will
questions.
be back. I can't wait to come back.
I'm excited. We have a few other trauma related things to talk about.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to these topics because one of them I briefly went into myself and my own journey, and then I love talking about trauma because it helps other people and us get through trauma, right?
It does.
So
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to having those conversations with you. And for now, can you just let everyone know where they can find you?
Yes, yes. So my website is hello. I'm sorry, that's my email. My email is hello at denverfamilycounselingservices.com. My website is denverfamilycounselingservices.com. You can find me on social media on TikTok at Trauma Healer, and I'm on Instagram at Trauma Healer 11. So, yeah, so either the website or email or through social media, would love to hear from you if you have questions.
Yeah,
There's a variety of ways, I offer different kind of just very, very cost-effective ways to work with me through social media, just kind of very low fees to just chat, back and forth, back and forth. And then
nice.
certainly we can work together with sessions and things like that. And I have other providers in my practice that are also very wonderful providers who are trauma informed and also do EMDR therapy, which I think we're going to talk about at some point.
Yeah,
And can help people process their trauma, regardless of the trauma. It doesn't have to be sexual assault, right? Trauma is
right.
trauma and it rocks our world.
Yeah,
So having support and healing from trauma is the goal.
perfect. All right. Thank you so much for being
Thanks,
here, and
Reah. Thanks so
see you
much. I
next time.
appreciate it.
Check us out on YouTube at Reah Higgs, ReahHagues. You can also keep up with us on Instagram at Just the Who Podcast.